Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. We're here today with special guest, Edward Beltran, who's here to share with us the hot new app, Pulse by Fierce, and his new book, Fierce Resilience, Combating Workplace Stress, One Conversation at a Time. So did you know there's a science-based app that can address stress in real time and improve communication in the workplace? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. Edward Beltran is the CEO of Fierce Inc., a pioneering company in communication and leadership training, and is a contributor to Forbes and Fast Company. Known for his innovative approach to employee well-being, Beltran is architect behind Pulse by Fierce, a groundbreaking app that leverages biometrics data to help employees and leaders identify and address workplace stress. This tool, often described as a Fitbit for business performance, is designed to combat the $300 billion lost annually due to stress-related issues. Under Beltran's leadership, Fierce Inc. has embraced dynamic and modern training methods, including 3D training and metaverse initiatives, while building on the 20-year foundation established by Susan Scott's iconic book, Fierce Conversations. Beltran's forward-thinking vision reflects his belief that leadership training must evolve beyond traditional in-person methods to offer diverse, adaptable solutions for today's challenges. So welcome to the show, Edward Beltran.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me on, and thank the listeners for being here with us today as well.
Well, my goodness, what an honor it is to have you here, and not only to talk about your work, but also your book. So why don't we start with the book? What inspired you to write this?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, first off, it's very important to lay out the foundations of what fierce resilience is and what it's based on. Our company, Fierce Inc., was started based on the best-selling book, Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott, about 20 years ago. And in that time, we've had the opportunity to work with large Fortune 500 companies down to emerging startups. And what we've done is teach conversation techniques that get results. And in that time, we've had the opportunity to really learn what's impactful, how to give feedback, how to confront in effective ways, not just theory, but actual hands-on practice. And we'll get into that here in a few minutes, Marianne. So when I took over as the CEO about 5 years ago, one of the things that we were hearing from our customers out in the workplace was, how do you make this easier? How do you make this more applicable? And how do you do it at scale? And so those are the three pillars that we started building our company on post-pandemic. And in that time, I also had the opportunity to introduce a lot of science. So I hired a chief behavioral science officer, absolutely brilliant guy by the name of Gabe Delarosa. And he came from a background of working with the Naval Center for Combat and Operational Stress Control, helping our armed and special forces be able to maximize their performance in, as you can imagine, situations that were high risk and really required you to be at your best, both physically and mentally. And what Gabe saw was the work that we had done for over 20 years and the parallels with what he's been doing in workplace performance. And that's the foundation of fierce resilience. And I'm happy to go into a lot more depth, but I'll pause there for any clarifying questions, Marianne.
Well, there's so much there I want to dive into. And I think this book is so timely, and the work that you do is so timely. I mean, so many people right now are having just challenges when it comes to conversation. So being able to really stitch that together where people can make sense of it and it's functional for them, I mean, what a big deal that is.
Yeah, absolutely, Marianne. And it's so amazing and brilliant when you step back and you think about it. So when you're in the workplace, and something happens, right? Someone makes a comment or there's ambiguity, especially in today's environment. You have a few choices. One is you could say nothing and go about your day, but your feelings of anxiety, of worry, they're still there. Or you can go and tell three other people and it just exasperates that stress, that manifestation, and also lends to a very toxic work environment. Or three, you could get curious and use the techniques that we teach of, asking for clarity, providing feedback. And what we found is that within a very quick time, you can get to the bottom of what it is that's there, getting clarity on a comment that a peer made, providing feedback, getting clarity on a comment that your boss made, or asking clarifying questions. Why did you give me this review? Or why did you give me this feedback? And what we find is that it decreases stress and drives resilience in the workplace. And so our approach, fierce resilience, is more than just having grit and bouncing back like a marshmallow. It's the courage to self-assess and act. It's all about action. So we all live stressful lives, especially in today's environment, Marianne, as you and I were discussing. And there's many ways that we've approached this historically, such as, better diet, better sleep, exercise, meditation, which works. And the key issue here is that it does not get down to the root stresses in your life. And that's what fierce resilience is about, is being able to figure out what those are and being able to engage them in tried and true techniques that get results, things that we've been doing for the past 20 years.
Well, I can easily see why not only this book is so well received, but why your company is just so noted for the work that it does, is really bringing in that self awareness piece that I think a lot of people have been missing. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I found interesting is you talk about self awareness in the book as like a first step towards really building resiliency. So, how can leaders and employees develop this skill set effectively?
Yeah, great point, Marianne. The The data is absolutely staggering. According to Tasha Eurich, one of my favorite IO psychologists, next to Gabe Delarosa, of course, is that 95% of people think they're self aware, but 10 to 15% really are. And in her data, in her research, she also finds as we rise up in our careers, our self awareness drops even further. And the reason for that is that we're less willing to ask for and provide feedback. Again, it's being open to that self awareness. Now, what we've done in our research, and again, a lot of techniques that Gabe brought to the table, we've coined a term that we call biometric intelligence. So it turns out, Marianne, that our bodies never lie. Even if we ignore things in our life or try to lie to ourselves, it turns out our body doesn't lie. It's constantly responding to our environment. And if we're able to listen to our body and say, what is it responding to in the moment? Why is it every time I interact with this peer or family member, my stress levels are going up, what we call heart rate variability? And being able to get down underneath that, what is really happening here? What is the conversation that's missing? How do I engage this properly? And this is described as a fierce resilience cycle, which we go into more depth in the book. But it's a really simple four-step process, starting with the self-awareness and ending in action, doing something about the events that are stressing us out in our lives.
So, do you have a case study or story you can share with us about how this has been implemented and how it's helping people?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to share with you too. So the first one is I really love this story because it brings to life very simply the things that are there in our life that we know that we're not addressing that have an outsized impact on our days. So there was a working mother who we were working with. She was a high achiever in the workplace, but she started to get feedback that she seemed disconnected, not aware, not her usual self. And this was baffling to her because she wasn't seeing that. She didn't understand, what was happening. And so she got with one of our Pulse certified coaches. That's our technology with biometric intelligence. And with the wearable device and with our proprietary app, we're able to see by the hour where she was at and what she was doing that drove stress events to then have a coach assess, well, what's happening here. So what it turned out that the most stressful event or situation in her life was her morning routine when she was getting herself and her family ready for their day. And what happened is that it would carry out into her day because she's mentally taxed from that morning chaos. And from the realization of how that was impacting her day, she was able to easily make adjustments such as adding 15 minutes to her morning routine, as well as having a conversation with her significant other around balancing the load a little bit more. Now, what's staggering is that the data from her wearable device showed that within a week, her stress dropped 33%, I believe it was. Absolutely amazing. The second scenario or case study I'd love to share with you has to do with professional services. So within the legal profession and the accounting profession, they're having a hard time retaining new associates. And I could definitely identify with that because I started my career off in professional services, public accounting to be exact. And what their typical model is that a new associate comes in and their direct manager is fairly new themselves, 2 years removed from being a new associate, and their mandate is very clear: quality of client delivery as well as billable hours. And it doesn't necessarily lend to the transition that many new associates have to endure coming into a new environment. And so therefore they have a lot of turnover. So what we did was we came in with Pulse, our biometric intelligence software, and we were able to do 30-day, 60, and 90-day check-ins with the coach, with again, looking at the biometrics. What are you responding to in your life? And instead of seeing things as binary, like, oh, this environment's tough. Oh, I'm working 90 hours. Oh, my boss doesn't like me. It was really helping them engage their environment directly, being able to ask questions, feel part of their environment. And we've seen very significant retention numbers within that segment. And again, it's because we're unlocking the self-awareness and giving people the tools and confidence to be able to engage in their environment.
Wow, that is so phenomenal. Can you share with us about the device and the data that it pulls in?
Yes, thank you. So, wearable devices, the data shows that 40% of people have a smartwatch or some type of wearable device, and they're continuing to sell at a very high clip. And what those devices are doing is they're grabbing your continuous heart rate. And instead of just giving you a lot of data like, oh, Marianne, you're stressed. You're like, great, I know I'm stressed, right? We're drawing that into our proprietary algorithm, into our proprietary app that we call Pulse by Fierce. And we're trying to make it very, very simple. We're showing you your stress events on a scale of 1 to 4, 4 being the highest. But more importantly, we're showing it to you by the hour. And when we integrate with your calendar and GPS, we're able to show you exactly where you're at when your stress was rising, when your body was reacting to something, to be able to show you trends you might not have been aware of. For example, every time you meet with this peer or you're in this particular meeting, something's happening. But then it's why. So with our in-app AI bot that asks you a lot of questions, help you get down to that self-awareness and then action, we also have a live coach who also looks at your biometrics to help move you from the safe zone of, my significant other's the problem or my boss is the problem, well, actually, this is what's happening. Your body's responding in these particular events. So let's talk a little bit about that and then move you into action. And the results that we've seen, Marion, are absolutely staggering because in one session, and because we have the biometrics, we're able to pull people back into, well, what's actually happening here, and within action in a 90-minute session. So we're seeing immediate results. It's absolutely incredible.
That is phenomenal. I love how it's something that we can also just download and have on our smartphones.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. In today's environment, it's about how do you make it easier? How do you give people the tools at their fingertips when they need it?
Well, and I understand that so you have this designed for individuals, for executives, and also for internal coaches. Can you I know we've kind of talked about individuals, but for executives and coaches, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're working with companies, we have Pulse as an underlying device to help people unlock that self-awareness of what it is that they're dealing with or what it is they need to develop, so that when we come together in a broader team format, they're able to talk a lot more intelligently about how they become better team members, how they show up more authentically, as well as utilize the tools of conversations to increase collaboration and increase innovation. The other thing that we're doing this year is we're releasing our very unique approach around emotional intelligence. So everyone knows emotional intelligence is important. We need it in the workplace, we need it in the moment. But what we find is that emotional intelligence isn't static. it's dynamic. And so what I mean by that is, we take an online assessment. We're in a very comfortable office chair, and we're taking this assessment. It gives us a score. Marianne, your emotional intelligence score is 100. You're like, great, awesome. I love that. But it turns out when you're out in the real world, when your stress levels are high, when other factors are contributing to you in the moment, that might not necessarily be your emotional intelligence score, and you might need a different lens to be able to navigate that situation. So, Pulse actually measures and shows your emotional intelligence in the moment, and also allows people to be nudged into what actions they need to take in the moment to manage those emotions. But again, what's most important is being able to pan back and say, why? Like, why is this happening? So when I first started off my career, I found myself having to manage my emotions a lot. And it turns out, I was suffering from insecurity and not necessarily having the confidence being in a very new environment. That's a very human thing, but it's also very taxing if I don't get underneath it. And so that's been our approach, and as it pertains to emotional intelligence, we're aiming to we're aiming to drive that even further from a measurement perspective.
With organizations that are set up with remote or hybrid workers, will this work for those environments too?
Yes, it absolutely does. And thank you for bringing that up. That is definitely an area that many companies are trying to focus on and asking the questions around, is there a variation in how these populations are experiencing their day to day? And so we don't share individuals' data, but we do roll it up into aggregate numbers to be able to show differentiation. So we could show all the people who are remote versus all the people in the office to be able to show, well, what's happening between these populations. And what's interesting is that both populations, believe it or not, are share very similar stress levels regardless of the workplace, if they're remote, hybrid, in office.
So many questions I want to ask you. It's such a fun, it's just such an intriguing app. And I really love how the book really furthers the understanding of not just this model, but how people can be better at resilience, but communication as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's really about what's most important to us is really that action. As I mentioned, 95% of people think they're self-aware, but 10 to 15% really are. And so we as receivers of people's communication or miscommunication in many aspects is the fact that people aren't always aware that they're unclear. They're not always aware of their emotional wake. They're not always aware of how they're coming off. And so when you look at the stats, you're like, okay, great, this is an opportunity for me to be able to provide Marianne, I'm going to use you in this example again, feedback. And what we find in our research, our own research is 90% of the time, these are misunderstandings where people say, I wasn't aware that I was using these words in this meeting that made you feel, devalued, or I wasn't supporting your project. The only way you could bring this to people's attention is by providing structured feedback like we've been teaching. And then, not going from 0 to 60, which we call confront, but giving people the opportunity to become self-aware.
So, does this app give pointers, or kind of notifications that allow people then to reassess where they're at in that moment?
It absolutely does. We're able to track before and after regarding, when you're engaging in a particular meeting or person. But what we do in the in-app AI with the in-app AI bot is we provide micro learning or step by step on how you build this conversation up and also practice.
Well, that really brings that all together and how that really helps people through being able to master their emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. We're very proud of the work that we've done and the impact to many of our customers. And so we're looking to scale this out and, better the world one conversation at a time.
So, as CEO of Fierce, what has been your biggest achievements?
As we open, I've had the opportunity to have a lot of formal education. And what I've found in the workplace is, regardless of having those opportunities or not, many people just want like the application. How do I use this tomorrow? Like, I have high stress or I have an employee that's been a problem. how do I address this quickly? Frameworks, theory, all that stuff is great. We all enjoy that. But in the real world, people are so stretched and their time is very limited. They want to know, how do I use this effectively, like today or tomorrow? And so, what I'm most proud of is that we've been able to pivot our company post pandemic into really focusing on what I call application, as well as being able to deliver it at scale for organizations and sustainability. Sustainability is huge. So many of us have been to trainings and we're like, hey, this is awesome. I've been pulling this training for hours or a couple of days. And then you have to go back to the real world. And then when you actually need to apply these approaches, you're like, what did I do with that binder? What did I learn? And so, what I'm really proud of is us being able to take something that we know works, we've measured it many times over, and just making it easier and easily accessible as well to many people in different modalities. So, the analogy I like to use, Marianne, is this. Some of us love a physical book. You open it up, you dog ear it, you underline it, however you like to read it. Others of us like digital, right? We're on the bus, we can read it a lot easier, or in transit. Some people like it in the audio version, and other people want to wait for it to come out as a movie. None of those are wrong. It all depends on the highest impact of the individual. How can I absorb this material? How can I use it in the real world? And so, what I'm very proud of as CEO is we've been able to, again, with that analogy, take something that we know works and break it down in different modalities so people can apply it in their daily lives as quickly as possible.
What does Fierce have coming up this year?
We are very proud that we're launching our emotional intelligence courses, as we talked about and we dissected, with Pulse underneath it. And Marianne, I'll give you a little bit of insight as well. Our next book will definitely be around emotional intelligence.
Oh, we can't have enough of that, I'll tell you. I think that's a topic we can all become masters at, is how to manage our emotions and our perspective, the lens which we view the world in.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I want to reemphasize this. It's taking action in your lives. It's determining what it is that is causing you to need to manage your emotions, what it is that's causing you to have stress, and being able to step back and take that action, because it's just going to linger, it's just going to continue. And at the end of the day, most of these come down to, majority of it comes down to conversation with yourself and others. And we want to be there to help you in the moment that you need us.
Well, since everything is about relationships, our family life, our work life, and those we meet in public, being a master of that is so important. Where can our listeners go to connect with you and learn more about the app Pulse by Fierce and also your book, Fierce Resilience?
Yeah, please visit us on our website at fierceinc.com, Fierce standard spelling, inc.com, or please connect with me on LinkedIn, Edward J. Beltran. I'd be happy to connect and answer any of your questions. And Marianne, I love that segue. The core of Fierce Conversations that Susan Scott wrote about is that the conversation is the relationship.
Is there a link on the website to download the app?
We do have links on the website, but if you go into the app stores, any of the app stores, you'll find Pulse by Fierce, and it'll come right up.
Well, Edward, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, listeners, for hearing me today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Edward. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about the hot new app, Pulse by Fierce, and your new book, Fierce Resilience, Combating Workplace Stress, One Conversation at a Time. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.